Hello everyone, this is Nightmare Daily. I know many of you use these stories to drift off to sleep. So before we begin, make sure you're relaxed, like the video, and subscribe to hear more true encounters from the edge of what we call reality. Now, get comfortable, close your eyes, and prepare yourself for what's waiting in the dark. This happened in 2020. Back in September 2020, I went to bed normally as I usually did. I fell asleep after 10 minutes or so. I woke up at around 3 a.m. and I was lying in bed looking at the ceiling, but my head was somewhat tilted to the right. I could see my nightstand, my lamp, and my clock in my peripheral vision, and my clock said 3-something. I couldn't see further to the right than that. I woke up with a very bizarre, dreadful feeling, and I felt like I was vibrating from head to toe. I thought to myself, God, I hate sleep paralysis. Here we effing go. I told myself in my head, wake up, wake up, wake up. But then it dawned on me. I was completely consciously awake, looking at my ceiling, in my bed. I was frozen. I could not move. My eyes were open, and they were the only thing I could move. Then the vibration feeling got more intense, and I felt like I was buzzing. It felt like when one of your limbs falls asleep, but this was a whole body sensation. I started panicking. This was new to me. I had had sleep paralysis before, but this was different. Then I felt myself lift off my bed. The amount of dread I began to feel in that moment is unexplainable. A thought entered my mind, something like, you are being taken. I was screaming internally, trying to resist whatever was happening. I continued to rise off my bed. I couldn't feel the mattress anymore. My eyes were getting closer to the ceiling, closer, closer. Then, everything went black. Darkness. Complete. Total. Still. Then, light. But not from a source I could understand. I was no longer in my room, no longer in my bed. I was above it, above the house. Suspended, weightless, buzzing with energy I didn't recognize. I looked down. The roof of our house felt like a memory. Below me, the neighborhood, unmoving, still asleep. I kept rising, 200 feet, 300, maybe more, and with every foot the fear faded, replaced by something else, something cold, but vast, curiosity. From that height, everything looked wrong. The houses, the angles, the symmetry, it was all too deliberate, like I was seeing it from above for the very first time, and it didn't make sense. Then I saw it. The disc, silver gray, motionless. Above me, a circular craft with a black opening in the center, and I was being pulled toward it, not violently, but without resistance. I didn't feel wind or motion, only direction. The closer I came to it, the less real my body felt. I was seeing through my own eyes, but my body was gone. No sound, no questions, no choice. I passed into the black and everything stopped. I came to, not by waking, not like sleep, just awareness returning. My eyes were open, but I saw nothing familiar, only space, vast, cold, silent. I wasn't floating, but I wasn't grounded either. I was standing, yet I felt no floor, no weight, no pressure on my feet, only perspective. Below me, the earth, not a picture, not a screen, I saw it, alive, turning slowly, covered in clouds and deep blue oceans. I wasn't looking at it. I was looking through something transparent, like a perfect sheet of glass. But there was no edge, no frame, no seams. I could see through the floor, the ceiling, and the walls, if they were even there. I was inside, but space was around me, and earth was beneath. Then I felt them, 3 presences behind me, tall, unmoving. I didn't hear their footsteps, they didn't speak with mouths, but I knew there were 2 males and 1 female, 7 feet tall, maybe more. They introduced themselves without names. They gave identity, not as information, but as feeling. I knew who they were without ever having known them. They did not threaten, they did not command. They spoke in emotion, in clarity, in something I don't have words for. Slow, one of them sent me a message, not with language, not with sound, just meaning. Come and see. No pressure, no force, but no refusal. And the ship moved. Shift tone, awe returns. Not through propulsion, not acceleration, just change. Earth grew smaller instantly. It didn't shrink. It didn't fade. It was just distant. As if space was a hallway and they knew the shortcut. Then, nothing. Not sleep, not blackness, just absence. I didn't feel myself leave. I didn't feel myself arrive. I simply came to again. When I opened my eyes again, I was still inside the vessel, still standing on something unseen. Still surrounded by glass that wasn't glass. But Earth was gone, and below me a planet. Not blue, not gray, not like any world we've ever seen from a telescope. It was green, everywhere, vibrant, unbroken, alive in a way that felt ancient and untouched. This place looked pure, no cities, no scars, no lines carved into it. From above it didn't look inhabited, but it was. I didn't have to ask, I just knew there was life down there, and it had been there far longer than we've been here. The ship moved again. It didn't shake, didn't rumble. We descended smoothly, like falling through a thought, like sinking into clarity. Clouds passed around us like breath, and then water. A vast ocean, clear and untouched, more vibrant than anything I've seen. The light of a nearby star glimmered across the surface like liquid diamonds. This water has never been altered. They didn't say it with pride. They said it like a reminder. This is its perfect state. I could feel their reverence, the way you might look at an ancient tree that's never been cut. The ocean below us was sacred. We moved forward, fast but smooth. The coastline appeared, but there was no beach, no transition, just ocean. And then jungle, thick, endless, towering. The trees weren't just tall, they were massive, their canopies tangled together into something that looked almost designed. buildings, structures, but not like ours. No bricks, no windows, no seams. They looked like crystal and metal merged into one, each one shaped like the top half of a spinning top. Smooth, seamless, like they had grown instead of being built. I couldn't find the right words, and I still can't. They didn't look manufactured, they looked inevitable, as if nature had designed them herself. We moved toward the land, toward the strange buildings near the water's edge. As we approached, one of the beings spoke again. "We are here. Come and see." The ship descended toward what looked like a wide-open bay beneath one of the larger structures. A hangar, maybe, but there were no doors, no lights, no noise, only openness and invitation. And then we were inside. Not walking, not guided, just there. Within the walls of a place I can only describe as a city. But not a city of concrete and metal, not grids and grids of boxes. This place was alive. The structures didn't tower, they flowed. Around the land, through it, with it. As if the city had grown out of the jungle itself. And then I saw them. People, dozens at first, then hundreds, walking together through open walkways, clear structures, gathering spaces. They looked human, pale skin, sharp features, every one of them wearing deep purple robes that shimmered slightly when the light touched them. They looked like royalty, but behaved like neighbors, smiling, greeting each other, moving with rhythm, with peace. No one looked rushed, no one looked afraid. I listened for voices, but none of them were speaking aloud. And yet I could hear them, simple phrases, small conversations. "Hello, how are you? Nice to see you." I asked the beings how I could hear them without sound, and one answered, "They are connected. What you would call a hive mind, but not as you imagine it." They showed me, not with words, but with imagery, a shared channel, a link, like Neuralink, but deeper, a connection built into them. They still had autonomy, still had emotion, but communication was silent, instant, unified. I saw people holding clear glass tablets, no buttons, no lights, just transparent glass, thin as paper. Some walked up to floating glass cubes, suspended in air, connected by beams of light. One by one they placed their hands into the light and stood still. "This is their internet," the being said, "information through light." I didn't understand how, I still don't, but they were absorbing something, learning, downloading, connected without wires. As I walked through the city of light, I didn't feel like a visitor. I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt expected. The beings walked beside me, but never ahead. They let me see, let me feel. And when I had questions, they didn't answer with words. They answered with knowing, with vision, with clarity that skipped the mouth and went straight into the mind. One of the beings turned to me, His presence felt ancient, heavy, like time was something he had lived through, not something that moved him. And then, without sound, he said, "They have achieved peace. No war, no illness, no conflict. All understand each other." I didn't ask how, because I could see it. In every movement, every person, every interaction. They weren't perfect. They were aligned. I felt something open in my thoughts. A download, a flash, a comparison. I saw Earth, not as it is, but as they see it. Loud, divided, busy, distracted. So much struggle just to understand one another, to live beside one another. Then their world, quiet, clear, every structure built with purpose, every action guided by unity. Nature wasn't something they built on, it was something they built with. They showed me what happens when a species learns to move forward without needing to compete, without needing to dominate. They showed me a world where technology wasn't a weapon, but a conversation with the universe. And then they gave me the closest thing to a message, a whisper of intent spoken with meaning instead of sound. We wanted you to know this exists. They didn't call it enlightenment. They didn't offer salvation. They didn't claim to be gods. They simply wanted to show what was possible. And then they said nothing more, just silence and peace. The city faded behind me. No goodbyes, no ceremony, just departure. I stepped back into the craft as effortlessly as I had arrived. The beings moved with me, not rushing, not waiting, only guiding. And then we left. The green world disappeared, not slowly, not with motion, just distance, like zooming out of a dream before it ends. One moment I was in their world, the next I was watching it vanish behind the stars. And then Earth. Again small at first, then larger, then real. We approached the atmosphere, passed through clouds, night surrounded us, and down below, lights, cities, movement, life, familiar but foreign now. I saw London, recognized it instantly. The Thames winding through darkness, the streetlights outlining roads like glowing veins, and there, just beneath us, Big Ben. The craft hovered high above it, 1,000 feet, maybe more. But I could see everything, and no one could see us. Scaffolding surrounded the tower like it was under repair, and from the silence, I heard something I hadn't heard before. Laughter. Soft, subtle, contained. One of the male beings turned to the others and said, "It's always funny to me that we are right here this close, and they have no idea." I don't know if it was sarcasm or pity or both, but I felt it, the distance, not of space, but of understanding. We weren't hidden from them, they simply weren't looking high enough. Then they said it again, "It's time for you to go back." And we moved, instant, effortless, no flash, no fire, just change from above London to above my house, looking down at my own rooftop like I was watching a memory play out from the outside. We hovered above my house, not far, just high enough to see the shape of my roof. There were no lights inside, just darkness, like the world had paused and waited for me to return. I felt myself move, but I wasn't in control. That vibration returned, low and deep, like the hum of the universe just behind the curtain. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, only feel. I passed through the hull of the ship, no door, no exit. I just left. Fell without falling, floated downward, toward my house, toward my roof, toward my room. The shingles passed by, then wood, then ceiling, and then I saw myself. My body lying still in bed, eyes open, breath calm, unmoving, like a shell waiting for the soul to return. And in an instant I re-entered, the same way I left. Vibration, buzzing, then silence. I gasped, shot upright in bed, heart pounding, mouth dry, like I'd just escaped drowning. The room was silent, still, exactly as I left it. Clock glowing beside me, 3:40 a.m. 40 minutes had passed, but it felt like a lifetime. I stood, paced the room, looked at my hands, touched the floor, the walls. Everything was there, everything was right, but something wasn't. It didn't feel like a dream. It didn't fade like sleep does. It stuck with me, like a memory too large to forget. And I haven't forgotten. Not what they showed me, not what they told me. Come and see, and I did. Now I wonder, why me, and who else has seen? Not every story ends with peace. Some don't end at all. The last encounter took us far from Earth, but the next one, it's closer. Too close. It begins on a futon, in the dead heat of a southern summer. There are no silver crafts, no shining cities, no beings with answers. Just silence, heat, and something no one ever saw. He doesn't believe in God, or ghosts, or anything supernatural. He was sleeping on a futon in his father's double-wide trailer. The cicadas were loud, too loud. Summer bugs flooded the night, and the air conditioner blasting. He could hear it, feel it, but the room was getting hotter, hotter and hotter. He kicked off the blanket. Sweat clung to his skin. Still, the heat built. He stared at the ceiling, tried to calm his breath. And then, everything stopped. Not just the bugs, not just the air. Everything. Silence so thick, it swallowed him. He couldn't even hear his own breath. He said his dad's name. Nothing. Like the world had turned itself off. Like something was waiting in the dark. He sat up, but couldn't move. Back pressed against the futon, legs limp, arms dead weight. Only his eyes could shift. Only his mind could scream. The room boiled. The silence swallowed everything. and something was near. Then he felt it, not on his skin, but deep in his chest, like a hand reaching straight through him from behind the air itself. It wrapped over his ribs, pulled hard. He didn't see it, he didn't hear it, but he felt his whole body get ripped from the futon. He tried to scream, and that's when his hearing slammed back on. Everything came rushing in, his voice screaming, his lungs on fire, and then hands, real ones, shaking him, his father's voice shouting in his ear. He was halfway outside the front door, one foot on the porch, the other on the carpet. Slow realization. Neighbors had come out. Lights flicked on down the street. Someone called the police. No one knew what had happened, and he didn't either. For weeks after, he had a bruise, huge, the size of a pumpkin, right over his chest, right where that invisible hand had grabbed him. No explanation, no fall, no accident. Nothing made sense. And worst of all, he remembered everything. His simple choice. Yes or no. He said yes, and the universe opened. All my life my mind saw in black and white, still images. Nothing moved, nothing danced, just echoes of memory. But 2 nights ago, everything changed. When I closed my eyes, the silence turned to cinema, color, motion, a live stream of something far beyond me. It wasn't a dream, it was a broadcast. Clips of nature and alien skies, western towns and alien planes. David Attenborough meets Kubrick meets something I don't have words for. Then, in sleep, I was asked, yes or no. I said yes, and they rocked me. They bent my leg, folded my arm, held me like a child in his mother's arms. I was nothing but a baby in the stars. Then we moved, fast, so fast. It felt like being launched by something ancient, like a roller coaster shot from a slingshot made of time. The stars got closer. There were lights, constant, flashing, like the signals of 1,000 ships crossing interstellar lanes. Everything was shaped like a dodecahedron. Everything connected by invisible highways through the black. I saw space stations, structures so big they could eclipse a star. Some looked like planets, others like weapons. One like the Death Star, but bigger, much, much bigger. I saw life forms, their faces contorting and changing like water in a dream. Everything moved, shifted, flowed. It was a newsfeed of alien consciousness, flashing, downloading, revealing. Everything was happening at once. The stars never left. They just stayed, always in the distance, flashing white. steady, like they were watching. The shapes, the visions, the colors, they kept coming. Worlds with oceans so deep they swallowed moons, buildings so tall they scraped the edge of light, species that blinked in and out like a flame, every frame, information, a constant stream of data I couldn't begin to process, but I felt it, like it was becoming part of me. And then they rocked me again like a baby, not cruel, not aggressive, gentle, protective, like I had seen too much, and now it was time to rest. They didn't speak, not with words, but I felt it. This was a gift. Not everyone gets to see. Not everyone says yes. We were moving again, slowly now, returning, the lights still flashing, white, bright, like stars flickering through time. We passed through them like fog, and then I saw it, home. The earth curled beneath me, blue, calm, small. They hovered above it for just a moment, let me look one last time. And then I was falling, not fast, not out of control, just descending into my bed, my body, my room. Still held in that fetal position, still rocked like a child. And as I opened my eyes, I cried, not out of fear, but because I finally understood how small we are and how much we haven't seen. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a threat. It was a window, a message, and a gift. Not all encounters leave you wondering if it was a dream. Some never give you the option. It was October 11th, 1973, just after sunset in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Charles Hickson, 42 years old, and Calvin Parker, just 19, sat quietly on an old pier by the Pascagoula River. They were co-workers at a shipyard. It had been a long day. They just wanted to fish, talk a little, maybe grab dinner afterward. But something changed. It started with a sound, a faint buzzing, like machinery, low but distinct. Then the lights came, bright, blue, hovering silently just above the riverbank. It wasn't a helicopter. No blades, no wind, no sound, just light. Before they could run, it was on them. A door opened, and 3 figures floated out. Charles remembered their skin was gray, wrinkled, almost elephant-like. No necks, cone-shaped heads, clawed hands like crab pincers where their fingers should have been. They had no eyes, no mouth, no sound. They didn't walk, they floated. Charles tried to stand, tried to run, but he couldn't move. Calvin froze. His entire body was locked. Then they were lifted, both of them, off the ground, into the ship. Calvin would later say he didn't even want to remember it. Not the table, not the bright lights, not the thing that scanned him without ever touching him. He told interviewers later, I didn't want to be there. I just wanted it to stop. I thought I was going to die. He wasn't the same after that. Inside the ship, something examined them. Charles remembered a floating eye, a mechanical thing that scanned over his body without making contact. No pain, just probing. Calvin said he blacked out. He couldn't take it. When they were brought back, the ship was gone. No burn marks, no wind, no sound, just silence, and two men shaking on a riverbank. Charles wanted to report it. Calvin didn't, but they ended up at the sheriff's office anyway. They told their story, then were left alone in a room. The sheriff secretly recorded them. He expected them to trip up, to laugh, to confess a prank, but what he heard was fear. November 5th, 1975. A logging crew of 7 men was finishing their shift in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, northeastern Arizona. The sun had already dropped behind the pine trees, casting long shadows across the road as they piled into an old pickup truck and headed back to town. Travis Walton, 22 years old, sat in the passenger seat, tired, covered in sawdust, same as every day. They weren't drunk. They weren't looking for trouble, just a group of rural men trying to get home. But about 30 minutes into their drive, something changed. They crested a small hill and saw a strange glow in the distance. Orange, bright, flickering like fire between the trees. At first they thought it was a crash or a forest fire, but as they got closer, they saw it. Suspended above a clearing was a craft. Not an airplane, not a helicopter. This thing was silent, metallic, shaped like a flattened disc. It hovered, tilted slightly, illuminating the clearing with an eerie yellow light. Travis got out of the truck. He walked toward it, too close, too fast. The others shouted for him to stop, but he didn't. Then, a beam of blue-green light shot down from the craft and hit him in the chest. He flew backwards, lifted off the ground, and slammed into the earth. Then, everything went still. No more beam, no more sound, just the smell of pine and 6 men screaming inside a pickup truck as they drove away. By the time they stopped, Travis was gone. The men drove in silence, hearts pounding, heads spinning. None of them could explain what they'd seen. None of them wanted to. But one thing was certain. Travis Walton was gone. After a few minutes, Mike Rogers, the crew leader, slammed on the brakes. He made a decision none of the others wanted to make. They turned around. Back to the clearing. Back to the light. Back to the impossible. But when they got there, it was empty. No craft, no light. No Travis. Just the cold air and the thick silence of the forest. They searched the area, yelling his name, circling the tree line. Nothing. No blood, no footprints, no trace. Just that feeling like the woods were holding their breath. Eventually they drove into town and told the sheriff. The crew was disheveled, panicked, barely able to speak. They told him what happened about the light, the ship, the beam, and how Travis had disappeared. The sheriff didn't believe them, but something in their eyes kept him from calling them liars. That night, dozens of officers, friends, and volunteers combed the forest for any sign of Travis. Nothing. He was gone. Completely. And for 5 days, people assumed the worst. Murder, an accident, a cover-up. The 6 men were interrogated, given polygraphs, pressed again and again, but their stories never changed. Then, on the 5th night, a phone rang, and Travis Walton was back. It was just after midnight when the phone rang at Travis Walton's brother's house. A weak voice on the other end of the line said one thing. They brought me back. Travis was found at a gas station nearly 30 miles from where he vanished. Disoriented, exhausted. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't shaved. His clothes were the same as the night he disappeared, and his eyes looked like they'd seen something he still didn't understand. When asked where he'd been, he paused, then whispered, "I thought I was dead." He described waking up inside a small, curved room, bathed in light. 3 beings stood over him, short, pale, hairless, with eyes too large for their faces. They didn't speak, they just looked at him. He panicked, threw something, and ran. He stumbled through narrow hallways and into another room where he met what looked like a human being, but something felt off, too calm, too perfect. They guided him gently, wordlessly. Then the lights returned, and he was gone again. He remembered flashes of stars, metal walls, a pressure in his chest like drowning without water. And then he was on the pavement, outside a gas station, beneath the night sky. No ship, no figures, no goodbye. Just the world as he left it, a little more broken. Town didn't celebrate when Travis returned. They questioned, they whispered, and most didn't believe him. The logging crew, who had passed every polygraph, were still seen as liars, or worse, accomplices. Travis had no money, no reason to fake this, and nothing to gain. He'd lost time, he'd lost peace, and he'd gained a trauma he couldn't explain. He was examined by doctors. His vitals were strange, elevated white blood cell count, dehydration, and signs of extreme stress. Some doctors suggested hallucination, but they couldn't explain the missing time, or the witnesses, or the wound-like triangle on his bicep. And then there was the polygraph. 6 men tested individually under pressure. 5 passed outright. 1 was inconclusive. None failed. Even the Arizona Department of Public Safety found no evidence of deception. Still, the ridicule came. News outlets mocked the town. Scientists dismissed the story. And Travis, once a quiet, hard-working logger, became a reluctant face of one of the most infamous abduction cases in history. He didn't want the attention. He didn't chase fame. And for years he stayed silent. But when he finally did speak, his story never changed. Not once. He said he still had nightmares, still saw the faces, still remembered what it felt like to float in that light. Investigators, skeptics, even seasoned UFO researchers tried to poke holes in his account. But every time Travis was asked to retell what happened, the details stayed exactly the same. No embellishment, no cracks, no contradictions. The polygraph results? He passed. So did the other 6 men in that truck. Each of them had seen the same thing, that beam of light, that craft in the clearing, and Travis being thrown like a rag doll before vanishing into thin air. Still, the media circled like vultures. News vans parked outside his family's home. Reporters called him a liar, a hoaxer, a man chasing fame. But if that was true, why did he never cash in? Why did he disappear for years, moving to small towns, taking odd jobs, avoiding cameras? Why did Calvin Parker, another abductee from an unrelated case, say he believed Travis more than anyone else? Because the truth, if it is the truth, isn't something that makes you rich. It ruins you. It follows you. In every dark room, every moment you wake up in sweat, every star in the sky that looks like it might blink twice. Even today, decades later, Travis Walton stands by his story. He doesn't claim to know why it happened or what they wanted. He only knows what he remembers. A light in the forest, a craft above the trees, and the feeling of being watched ever since. For a final deep dive, we travel back to 1961, to a quiet, winding highway in rural New Hampshire, where a couple on their way home from vacation took a detour they would never forget. Betty and Barney Hill were driving through the White Mountains. It was late, after midnight, and they hadn't seen another car for miles. Betty watched the sky. There was a light up there, too bright, too low. At first she thought it was a plane, but it was moving. Wrong. Stopping. Starting. Darting in sharp angles no aircraft could manage. Barney pulled the car over. He grabbed his binoculars. The object hovered, silent, just above the trees. It was massive, disc-shaped, with rows of windows along the front. Barney stepped out of the car. He walked toward it, still gripping the binoculars. And in that moment he swore. He saw figures, humanoid shapes, watching him from behind the glass. Suddenly the craft shifted, descending fast. Barney ran back to the car, yelling, "They're going to capture us!" They took off, speeding down the dark road. But then, a strange sound, like a metallic hum, rising and falling in rhythm, and the world went quiet. When they came to, they were 35 miles down the road. No memory of driving, no explanation for the missing 2 hours. Betty's dress was torn. Barney's shoes were scuffed, and both of their watches had stopped. In the weeks that followed, Betty began having vivid, violent dreams. Dreams of being taken aboard a ship, of small gray beings with large heads and black eyes, of a strange star map, drawn in light. Barney began to experience severe anxiety, panic attacks, and strange circular marks on his skin. They sought help, a psychiatrist, hypnosis therapy, and what came out was almost identical. They described being led down metal halls, being separated, examined, scraped, prodded, samples taken of skin, hair, even reproductive cells. Barney wept under hypnosis. He spoke of eyes, those endless black eyes peering into his soul without blinking. The doctors were baffled. They said it didn't seem like fantasy, didn't feel like delusion. They called it a shared traumatic event, with no known origin. Years later, Betty was shown a star chart based on her dream drawing. An astronomer pointed out that it closely matched the Zeta Reticuli star system, a binary star over 39 light-years away, a system Betty would have had no way to know about in 1961. Even now, decades later, Betty's testimony is studied in UFO archives, cited in psychology papers, and whispered about by skeptics who can't fully explain her accuracy. Especially that star map, the Zeta Reticuli alignment. It wasn't public knowledge when she described it. It wasn't even observable with Earth-based telescopes, and yet Betty drew it with unnerving precision, not once but multiple times under hypnosis, and again later when asked cold. The details were always the same. Some believe it was a hoax. Others say it was deep memory planted through suggestion, but the people closest to Betty, they said she was no actress, no storyteller, and that the fear in her eyes wasn't the kind you can fake. As the years passed, she stopped seeking attention, but she never stopped believing. She kept all the letters she received from strangers who shared dreams that matched hers, encounters in forests, lights in the sky, beings who didn't speak with mouths, but directly into the mind. They say she died peacefully, but those closest to her say Betty saw things in her sleep, right up until the end. The same silver craft, the same hallway, the same eyes watching her. Not with malice, not with empathy, just watching. And when people asked her why she never backed down, she simply said, "Because I remember what happened. Because they were real." That was the story of Betty and Barney Hill, the final case in tonight's journey. But if their story stays with you, in your thoughts, in your dreams, in the darkness behind your eyelids, you're not alone. You've been listening to Nightmare Daily. Thank you for staying with me through the dark. If you're still awake, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you've experienced anything you can't quite explain. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same darkness, same questions. Until then, sleep well.